Tony tonight looked like he should retire.
Tony Ferguson's time is finished. Now he gonna come back. Someone gonna beat him again. I believe, because when you take damage like this, you never gonna be same. Never ever. Even if you're Tony Ferguson.
The MMA world has always been filled with mythical fighters, warriors that would spill blood and fight tooth and nail for a chance at becoming great. And while yes, many have gotten close to greatness, none are quite like Tony El Cucuy Ferguson.
For the honor.
A man whose unpredictable nature and relentless pursuit of greatness have left fans in awe and opponents in pieces. But as the years pass and the wars take their toll, one question lingers in the minds of fight fans. Is Tony Ferguson still the boogeyman of the lightweight division, or is he now haunted by the demons he once unleashed? This is the story of a man who refused to break until he did. Long before the octagon and before the wars, there was a young man in Muskegon, Michigan, with a fire in his belly and a chip on his shoulder. Tony Ferguson wasn't simply born into greatness, but instead he forged it himself through sweat, sacrifice, and a relentless will to succeed. Tony was born on the 12th of February in 1984 in California, but was raised in Michigan. Growing up, Tony was a natural athlete, a star on the football field and a force to be reckoned with on the wrestling mat, with him becoming an NCAA All-American champion in 2002. Competitive spirit was evident from the start, but it wasn't simply his talent that set him apart from the rest, it was his refusal to accept defeat. And this would be a trait that would come to define his entire career. Following college, Tony would work odd jobs before being introduced to mixed martial arts. He began his MMA career in 2008 after transitioning from his background in collegiate wrestling and various striking arts. His entry into MMA was raw, unpolished, and driven by an unyielding desire to prove himself. With each fight, Tony sharpened his skills, honing the unorthodox style that would eventually strike fear into the hearts of his opponents. But even in those earlier days, it was clear. This was a man who was destined for something far greater. Tony's early career would see him gain a record of 10-2, with notable wins over kickboxing champion Joe Schilling and a win over Brock Jardine, where he would win the Pure Combat Welterweight Championship. In 2010, Tony got the opportunity to showcase his talents on a brand new stage. For most fighters, the Ultimate Fighter is a proving ground, a place where dreams are either made or broken. But for Tony Ferguson, TUF 13 was a lot more than just an opportunity. It was a stage on which he would announce his arrival to the world.
Get ready as two giants of MMA take command of a fresh squad of fighters.
Every season, the show and the talent get better. And I expect to see some guys who want to be world champions.
Guiding Ferguson through the crucible of TUF 13 was none other than former UFC heavyweight champion Brock Lesnar.
Is Tony Ferguson.
Known for his raw power and intensity, Lesnar was the perfect mentor for a fighter like Tony, someone who thrived on pressure and pushed himself to the limit. Under Lesnar's watchful eye, Tony honed his already unique style, blending it with the relentless aggression that Lesnar demanded from his fighters.
Straight punches, Tony. In the sparring, he's all over the place. He's going to be a hard guy to hit, and he's got a little mean streak.
These two were an unlikely pairing. Lesnar, the behemoth with a wrestling pedigree, and Tony, the unorthodox striker with a background in multiple disciplines. But together, they formed a formidable team.
Wrestle! Yes, yes!
All right.
From the moment he stepped into the house, it was clear that Tony was different. His intensity, his unorthodox training methods, and his unwavering confidence set him apart. But it wasn't just his demeanor that left an impression, it was his performance inside the cage. Throughout the season, Ferguson faced tough competition. His fight with Justin Edwards was a turning point, where Tony's resilience and knockout power were on full display. But it was his bout against Ramsey Najem in the finale that truly cemented his place in UFC history. Najem, a skilled grappler with a relentless pace, was seen as a formidable challenge. Yet Tony, with a laser-focused mindset and devastating striking, dismantled his opponent with a crushing knockout, proving that he was a force to be reckoned with.
Right hand by Ferguson. 3-round fight for the honor. Ultimate Fighter shot. And then it's all over!
Tony delivered one of the most memorable knockouts in TUF history, earning him not only the title of TUF 13 champion, but also a highly coveted UFC contract. In that moment, Tony Ferguson wasn't just a fighter who won TUF. He was a future contender, a name that the lightweight division would soon come to fear.
Tony Ferguson, ladies and gentlemen! Congratulations!
After dominating on The Ultimate Fighter, Tony Ferguson's journey was just beginning. Now under the bright lights of the UFC, it was time for Tony to prove that his success on the show was not simply a flash in the pan, but a sign of things to come. Tony made his official UFC debut at UFC 135, taking on veteran Aaron Riley. From the opening bell, Ferguson's aggression and unorthodox striking were on full display. A broken jaw suffered by Riley in the first round led to a stoppage, giving Tony his first UFC victory and setting the tone for his career. But it was his fight against Yves Edwards at the TUF 14 finale that truly showcased Tony's potential. Edwards, a seasoned fighter with a well-rounded skill set, was a tough test for the rising star. Yet Tony's relentless pressure and striking variety earned him a unanimous decision victory, solidifying his status as a contender to watch.
Playing the winner by unanimous decision, Tony El Cucuy Ferguson.
As Tony continued to climb the ranks, each fight became a statement, a declaration that he wasn't just another fighter in the lightweight division, but a future champion in the making. Victories over names like Mike Rio, Katsunori Kikuno, and Abel Trujillo showcased Tony's evolving skill set as he combined his unorthodox striking with slick submissions and an unbreakable will.
Try to get up. Try to get out of that position.
There's a choke.
Trying to lock it in right here, right now.
Tony's got it. He's got it. It's it. That's it.
It's all over.
Tony.
It was during these fights that Ferguson's reputation as one of the most dangerous fighters in the division began to take shape. His ability to absorb punishment and adapt to his opponent's strengths and turn the tide of a fight in an instant made him a nightmare for anyone who stepped in the cage with him.
He's the scariest guy at 155, in my word.
I agree.
And then came the streak, a run of dominance that would become legendary. From 2013 to 2019, Tony Ferguson went on one of the most impressive winning streaks in UFC history, racking up 12 consecutive victories against the best the lightweight division had to offer.
Granada. Starting to square. There's the tap. Tony Ferguson. Tony El Cucuy Ferguson.
His fight with Edson Barboza was a turning point. A brutal, bloody battle that saw Tony overcome a tough opponent with a dust choke.
Good defense so far. Ferguson. He's got it. Ferguson.
A submission that would become his signature move. While this win set the tone for what was still to come, it was his bout against former champion Rafael dos Anjos that truly cemented Tony's place among the elite.
Winner by unanimous decision, Tony El Cucuy Ferguson.
Over 5 grueling rounds, Ferguson would outstruck and outpace the former champion, showing a relentless pace that few could ever match. And then at UFC 216, Tony faced Kevin Lee for the interim UFC lightweight championship. But Kevin Lee was no ordinary opponent.
He's got him extended.
There's the tap.
There's a grimace on the face of Mustafayev.
I think he's out.
Wow. They're throwing bombs. Get
That's it. With explosive wrestling, devastating ground and pound, and a rapidly improving striking game, Lee was a rising star in the lightweight division. He was younger, faster, and many believed his grappling would pose a significant threat to Tony's unorthodox style. In the earlier rounds, Lee's wrestling pedigree was on full display. He took Ferguson down multiple times, and for a moment, it seemed like the younger fighter's strength and athleticism might overwhelm the veteran. Lee even secured a dominant position and unleashed a barrage of strikes, testing Tony's resilience to the limit.
Tony Ferguson. Tony's got to survive here. Big elbows. High mount here for Kevin.
But as he had done so many times, Tony weathered the storm. With a calmness that belied the chaos around him, he found an opening, sinking in a triangle choke that forced Lee to tap. In a fight that could have gone either way, Tony once again proved that no matter how dangerous the opponent, his will to win was unmatched.
Tony Ferguson!
He went out!
Has done it!
With the belt around his waist, Tony Ferguson was on top of the world. But as we all know, the fight game is unpredictable, and for Tony, the road ahead would be filled with even greater challenges, both inside and outside the octagon, as he now chased the undisputed title.
Champion of the world, Tony El Cucuy Ferguson!
In the world of MMA, few rivalries have ever captured the imagination of fight fans quite like Khabib Nurmagomedov versus Tony Ferguson. It was a clash of styles, personalities, and legacies. A fight that seemed destined to happen, yet it was cursed from the start.
It's Tony time!
5 times. 5 times this fight was booked, and 5 times fate intervened. Injuries, weight cutting issues, and a global pandemic all conspired to keep these two titans apart, leaving fans to wonder what might have been. The saga began in 2015, when the UFC first booked Tony Ferguson to face the undefeated Dagestani wrestler Khabib Nurmagomedov. Both were on impressive winning streaks, and the matchup promised to be one of the most compelling stylistic battles in lightweight history. But just days before the fight, Khabib was forced to withdraw due to a rib injury, leaving fans disappointed and the fighters frustrated. But the UFC didn't give up, and neither did the fighters, nor did the fans. The bout was rebooked again and again and again, but each time something went wrong. Injuries, weight cut issues, and even a freak accident that left Tony with a torn LCL just days before UFC 223.
Khabib Nurmagomedov has been medically unfit. He has not been cleared to fight for his scheduled 25-minute battle with Tony Ferguson. The UFC officially announcing that that fight has been dropped from the card. No.
Tony Ferguson hurt himself. He tore his LCL. And apparently that's an injury that you don't need surgery on, but he actually tore it off the bone. He's going to need surgery.
For Tony, Khabib was the ultimate challenge. The man that many believed could match his intensity and unbreakable spirit. The idea of facing Khabib became an obsession, a fight that would define his legacy. But no matter how many times it was scheduled, the powers above seemed determined to keep these two warriors apart. The final chapter in the saga came in 2020, when the fight was booked for the 5th time at UFC 249. But once again, the bout was cursed, this time by a global pandemic. Khabib, trapped in Russia due to travel restrictions, was unable to compete, and the fight was called off for good.
We found out that Khabib Nurmagomedov is officially out of his scheduled fight with Tony Ferguson for April 18th.
For years, the MMA world waited with bated breath, hoping that one day we'd get to see these two warriors finally meet in the octagon. But despite the cancellations and setbacks, the fight never happened, leaving a void in the legacy of both fighters. A void that fans and pundits alike still debate to this day. With the Khabib fight slipping away one more time, Tony faced a new challenge. A challenge that will prove to be one of the most pivotal moments in his career. Enter
Justin, the highlight, Gaethje!
Big right from Gaethje! Yeah, Gaethje with some... Oh, he got him with a overhand right! It's over! That is it!
a fighter known for his violent, all-action style and ability to absorb and dish out punishment in equal measure. Gaethje was a different kind of danger. A former World Series of Fighting champion, his knockout power and iron chin made him one of the most feared men in the lightweight division. But it was his new, more calculated approach, thanks to coach Trevor Whitman, that made him even more formidable. Against Tony, Gaethje brought a game plan that perfectly balanced brutality, and precision.
From the opening bell, Gaethje's power and accuracy were on full display. He landed heavy shots that would have put most fighters away, but Tony, as always, refused to back down. Round after round, Ferguson absorbed unimaginable punishment. His face was a mask of blood and swelling, yet he kept moving forward, driven by the same indomitable will that had defined his entire career.
But this time, it wasn't enough.
Gaethje's power and precision overwhelmed even Tony's legendary toughness. As the referee stepped in to stop the fight in the 5th round, a new reality set in. Tony Ferguson was no longer the unstoppable force he had once been. The loss marked the beginning of a decline, one that would seem struggle to regain the form that had made him a fan favorite and a feared contender.
And new interim UFC lightweight champion, Justin the Highlight Gaethje.
This would mark the beginning of the end for El Cucuy.
In December 2020, Tony faced Charles Oliveira, a fighter known for his elite grappling and submission skills. Despite Tony's legendary toughness, Oliveira dominated the fight from start to finish, controlling Ferguson on the ground and nearly breaking his arm with a vicious armbar.
Deep. Oh my goodness.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness.
Of course, Tony refused to tap, a testament to his warrior spirit, but the damage was done. Oliveira's control was absolute, and Tony suffered a lopsided unanimous decision loss.
Unanimous decision, Charles Dobrowski.
5 months later, Tony faced Beneil Dariush in UFC 262. It was a similar story. Dariush, another grappling specialist, imposed his will on Ferguson, controlling him on the ground for most of the fight and almost breaking his leg in a brutal knee bar. As he had done many times before, Tony weathered the storm and got out. Tony's attempts to mount any significant offense were stifled, and he once again lost via unanimous decision.
For the winner by unanimous decision, Beneil Dariush.
The loss marked Tony's 3rd consecutive defeat, a stark contrast to the winning streak that defined his earlier career. By the time Tony stepped into the octagon to face Michael Chandler at UFC 274, his back was against the wall.
After 3 consecutive losses, many wondered if the former interim champion still had the fire that had once made him one of the most feared men in the lightweight division. Now facing the ever-dangerous Michael Chandler, a former Bellator champion who, just like Gaethje, had rockets in his hands. In the first round, Tony showed flashes of his old self. He rocked Chandler with sharp strikes, his unorthodox style still as unpredictable as ever. For a moment, it looked like Tony was back, ready to reclaim his place among the lightweight elite.
But then, it happened.
Was honestly
front kick from hell, perfectly timed and devastating in its execution, landed flush on Tony's chin. The lights went out instantly, and Tony Ferguson, the man who had survived wars in the octagon, was left unconscious on the canvas in one of the most brutal knockouts in UFC history.
This was like a soccer kick right to the chin.
This knockout was more than just a loss. It was a turning point, a stark reminder of the unforgiving nature of the fight game.
For Tony, the physical damage was clear, but the psychological toll was perhaps even greater. The image of him lying unconscious became a symbol of the end of an era, a moment that left fans and pundits questioning if Tony could ever return to his former glory.
In September 2022, Tony moved back up to welterweight in a turn of events that would have him face Nate Diaz in the highly anticipated main event of UFC 279.
We have Nate Diaz versus Tony Ferguson.
In a fight that saw both veterans looking to regain their footing, Tony once again found himself on the losing end. In the 4th round, Diaz locked in a guillotine choke, forcing Tony to tap out. It was another tough loss, this time in a division where he had hoped to find a new life.
Tony's return to the lightweight division didn't fare much better.
At UFC 291, he then faced Bobby Green,
and despite a valiant effort, he succumbed to an arm triangle choke in the final seconds of the third round.
Oh my goodness, this is tight. He's out cold!
The losses were now piling up, and each one chipped at the legacy that Tony built over years of blood, sweat, and sacrifice. In December 2023, Tony took on rising star Paddy Pimblett at UFC 296, hoping to stop the skid, but it wasn't to be. Despite his best efforts, Tony lost via unanimous decision, further extending his losing streak.
By unanimous decision, Paddy, the Paddy Pimblett.
In August 2024, Tony faced Michael Chiesa in a welterweight bout. Once again, he was outmatched, losing via a rear naked choke in the first round. This defeat marked Tony's 8th consecutive loss, a heartbreaking record that surpassed even the legendary BJ Penn for the longest losing streak in UFC history. For Tony Ferguson, the journey from unstoppable force to struggling veteran has been both dramatic and painful. Yet despite the setbacks, Tony's spirits remain unbroken. He continues to fight, driven by the same unyielding desire that made him a legend, even as the odds grow steeper with each passing bout. Tony Ferguson's career is a story of triumph and heartbreak, of unyielding will and a relentless pursuit of greatness, from the dizzying heights of a 12-fight winning streak to the depths of an 8-fight losing streak. Tony has experienced it all, but through it all, he has remained true to himself. A fighter to the core, a man who never backed down from a challenge no matter how daunting, a true warrior. Yet, as the years have passed and the wars in the octagon have taken their toll, the question must be asked. Is it time for El Cucuy to consider stepping away? At 40 years old, with an 8-fight losing streak and the damage from countless battles showing on his body, retirement may be the wisest part. The spirit remains willing, but the physical toll of a career filled with brutal battles cannot be ignored. For a fighter like Tony, the decision to retire is never easy. The octagon has been his proving ground, his sanctuary. But there comes a time where even the greatest warriors must lay down their arms. Tony has given everything to the sport, his blood, his sweat, his heart. And while he may still have the desire to compete, the risks now outweigh the rewards. But if you ask El Cucuy, he believes he might still come back.
I don't want to retire, I really don't. But I love the UFC and I don't want to go anywhere else. So I'm not going to put both gloves down. I'm going to put one. And I'm going to keep the other one just in case.
As the fight game moves forward, Tony Ferguson's story will stand as a testament to what it means to be a true warrior. And while the future may be uncertain, one thing is for sure. El Cucuy will always be remembered as one of the most compelling, fearless, and enigmatic fighters in the history of MMA. Perhaps now it's time for Tony to hang up the gloves and protect the legacy he's built, preserving the health that remains. Because in the end, it's not about how many times you fall, it's about how many times you get back up and knowing when it's time to walk away. This is Tony Ferguson's story, and whether he continues in the octagon or beyond, his impact on the sport will never be forgotten. Thanks for watching, and remember, stay strong, stay relentless, and as Tony would say, champ shit only.
This is a rat race, but I'm no rat. I'm a fucking turtle, ninja turtle. So which one's your favorite? I like Michelangelo.